This meeting is being recorded.
That's going to be useful still. Hello.
Here, hi Frodo.
Hello.
What is that? I'm sorry, I can't see. Is that something I should know?
That's my microphone.
Oh,
So
okay.
I wasn't sure if you could hear me yet, so that's why I was holding it up.
Oh yeah, I didn't know what that was.
I just put a black thing on top of it, so it's not too. Sorry, I'm late again. This, that, and the other transport, etc. Sorry.
Okay.
And
We were
now,
just talking.
sorry, Dini, what were we saying?
Hugh and I were just catching up, and so Fabienne, the other thing is that I might be in Paris this summer doing an exhibition. So I'm not sure if you can get down over Ross, but I'll let you know. My meeting is at 11 today to finalize this.
Yes,
So,
let me know if it's basically if I'm around Brussels on that day. It's very easy and convenient for me to go down to Paris. So if I'm not like traveling to Bretagne to see family or something of the sort, then happy to go down.
great, and if not, then I can even come over to Brussels and we can meet. But yeah, so I don't know where it's going to be yet. I'll know more today at 11. So anyway, hi. So welcome everybody.
Dini, the Mix conference, you've been a part of that a year or two ago, right?
Several years, but not this year because it's taking place at the same time as something. Oh, I know. I'm going to London in April, and I can't turn around and go back to Mix in May. And in May, John and I are being honored by the university for our donations. So I'm going to be out of town for that. So that's kind of neat.
Very, very good. You can still hear me, by the way, right?
Yeah.
On the event at the British Library that I mentioned, I met Stella, who organized
Yeah,
it.
Stella Wisdom is great. She's my buddy.
She is a huge Dini fan.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to tell you because she really wanted to join us yesterday as kind of a surprise. Not yesterday, on Monday, but she couldn't, so that's why I'm telling you today. So there you go. Another Dini fan.
I'm a big Stella fan. So she and I mean, she loves the Next. And I've spoken to the British Library personnel twice. And they would do what we're doing with the Next if they could do it. But as a National Library, they're stymied by requirements. But boy, she loves what we're doing with it. So it's great.
Yeah, it was funny because I was just in the audience and I constrained myself to asking only 2 questions. But she recognized me. She was at the very first Future of Text, which was at the British Library. So that was quite cute. Then I mentioned who I'm working with to show off. She said, "Really, Dini?" So that was really nice. And in terms of the British Library as an institution, there were 2 other women on the panel who were really, really fantastic. One of them is basically, I think, the chairman of the Librarians Professional Association or something. I'm seeing her in February. Brilliant woman. I hope we can rope her in here. I was just so impressed by what she said. And then there is another big shot at the British Library who introduced to me the beautiful sentence of being in a library is being in a place where other people are thinking. So I'm hoping to rope these guys into our dialogue.
Was it Jim Pope or Ian? Was it Jim or Ian?
No. They were all ladies. These good
Okay.
ones. There was one Scottish guy and one other author English guy. Other than that, there were ladies and they were ridiculously amazing. Anyway, I'll see her soon. Hope to bring her in. Yeah, so on the agenda today, in terms of catching up, one of the things is Emily and Edgar and I are going to Rotterdam in a zoo at the end of February, and we will be swinging by the beautiful city of Brussels. So that'll be nice to have a lunch with the family on the way. So that's something that we organized today.
Good.
And
What else?
that's really my update. Other than had a brief chat with Mark yesterday and a brief chat with Fabienne this morning on the whole objects in the world. Both of them recorded, transcribed, and put into what will be our this year PDF book. I'll send it. It's just that because I've been doing the web, I actually forgot to do the last 2 meetings, so I need a little bit of time. But it's all been very happy agreements on exactly what we talked about on Monday. So nothing to report other than we talked about it and it was lovely. So yeah, that's it from Wimbledon. I'm going to mute because I'm opening a package here while I'm listening to you guys.
Okay. All right. So where are we? Fabian, do you want to talk about updates and anything that you might have?
Yes, and I can show you something. Either I show you basically the setup I'm preparing for this year, or I do it also, and I can do both. I guess that would be best. I show you now, and maybe on one of the Mondays. So I'll try the usual screen sharing. Yeah, interrupt me whenever you want. It's
Okay, thank you.
Oh, Dini, did I mention that I now have fiber at home?
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, it's really good. What I'm doing now is unwrapping the Ethernet cable to make sure it's the highest speed possible. It's ridiculously fast fiber. It works very well. So for future hosting arrangements, we shouldn't have any nonsense anymore. So while I'm listening to you, I may disappear behind the computer, but I can hear every word just to plug this in.
All right, go ahead, Fabian.
So can you see my screen?
Yes.
Super. So yes, I'll show you also the code. I haven't published anything anywhere yet. So that's the space itself. I know it's counterintuitive, but forget a little bit the visual. I put visuals mostly to show that it's different. What is actually interesting for us, in my opinion at least, is what happened behind the scene. So I put a big visual, but it could be something totally different. Put something relatively neutral, not too inspiring, but still a bit visually different. Some of the things you already know and recognize, namely the little icon up there and the little pieces of text. Also, don't get to hang on those. They can be removed, they can be visually changed, the appearance also changed. What is, though, really new is that if I take, so the website also, I can give it to you. So I'll put it in the chat. So if you open this link on whatever device, can be on the headset or can be on desktop or mobile even, I guess. But what's new is if I take a document, so for example, an image, photo of what I do at home, and I drag and drop here on the top left corner, it's there. And it doesn't go through any third-party server. So there is no more Dropbox. There is nothing like Google Drive or whatever. Yeah, so some of you are uploading images there. Was it an image or was it something else?
It was an image. It was a JPEG, 433 kilobytes, and it uploaded. I heard the playing immediately on letting go of the mouse.
Nice. And the little ping, so you can also, there is about the how it's done. The ping you heard is this. So I have what's called a notification server, and I have two notification topics. So I can subscribe to more topics. One is like the file being uploaded. So I guess that's what you send, Frode, the ask-ai.si.jpg.
Yes.
And there is another topic, which is when it needs a conversion. So here, there is no conversion because JPEG is something that can natively be used in WebXR. But for other format, so for example, I'll try with PDF. So if I take a PDF here and I drag and drop it here, so the first beep is the upload, and the second beep is the conversion. So the PDF here has been uploaded. So I can hide this, and it's been converted. So I have the source, what was the original file, and then the extension, like it could be JPEG or PNG. Yeah. So it's this is a little bit different, but it's mostly things you've seen before. Like it's very close to the thing at the symposium, except again, like there is no more Dropbox. It's straight to the server. It's also drag and drop, and I think I mean, it's much faster also. And I think most importantly, I can show you how it's done in terms of code. You don't have to understand the code itself, but basically, I'll put it really big. It's very short. So that's how to convert a file that ends with .pdf. That's the command to do it. What you get out, so JPEG, and that's telling the notification server, hey, the source was this, and what you get out is the .jpeg. And why? So that's new in the sense that this is to convert a PDF, and if you were to convert something else, like a .ppt or whatever, you would basically do something like this. You would copy that example. You would probably call it .ppt, for example, or .doc or whatever. Edit it. And then you would find, so I think it's soffice, but there are other commands. Here you'd say .ppt, probably a JPEG at the end, and that's about it. And normally, if things is done right, blah, 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 then you have a new way to convert PPT. And my hope is that this is then done, let's say on GitHub or publicly, so that if someone else, one of us, three, or somebody from the Future of Text broader group, or for university, or totally random who is not part of any of those groups, they can do the same, share it online, and then we can expand basically the amount of supported files. And the same way on the front end, let's say. So I'll show you. Here I have the same thing. They're called filters. Why I call them filters. And it's the same principle. Here it would be for JPEGs, filters. And it's, I'll take the simplest. So same, you don't have again to understand the code. The point is it's like 10 lines maximum. Here it's like, oh, I have an SVG. And then to show you what it looks like is if I take an SVG, which I probably have somewhere, my documents, I guess. And then I drop it, I will see it just as an example in the console. So I'll make that much bigger. Yeah, the t-shirt. So same principle. And here I have, it is an SVG image. So it's totally pointless. Like it doesn't do anything, but it shows that it works. And the same way you imagine, like you copy paste that or you clone that filter, and then you can do it. And you can have multiple filters, one after the other. For example, if you convert them, if you wanted to make dynamic. But the point is now we can do less than in at the symposium, but hopefully it's more flexible in the sense that it's easy to add converters or filters. It's not trivial. Sorry, I should not say it's easy. It's much easier than before. It doesn't mean that anybody can come and say, hey, I had a converter or a filter. But now, now it's not like a huge, like hundreds or thousands of lines of code inside another directory buried somewhere. It's tiny snippets that can be used as templates. Voilà.
Okay, so great. What I like about it is a drag and drop. It's really, really good. We can use our own library on that we are carrying around on our computer, which is nice. We don't have to rely on the internet to pull things down, right? So we've got it sitting on our desktop. I'm guessing that we can put any kind of background we want in that environment, that is just a test environment.
Yes.
So we can have a background like that and then something else that's just the media, right? Just the stuff we drag and drop in there. So think of that. And then the other thing I think is interesting is once we get that, my next question though, is once we get those documents in there, let's say, for example, we put a PDF that converts like you showed, then the next step would be able to start to do things with that PDF. Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah. and it's not there yet, because I wanted, and I honestly I think I needed like a cleaner slate, a better way to do this, because otherwise it becomes like a plate of spaghetti or a castle of cards that you touch something and then everything breaks and you don't understand why. So I hope at least, but I'm not sure, of course, that this kind of architecture lets us do more while at the same time is safer. But yeah, in terms of interactions, you still cannot do anything richer than before. That's
Can
it.
I just have one more question before you jump in, Frodo? So if that's the case, then the next question is, what's the lowest? We should start with the easiest thing. Like, what's the lowest hanging fruit that we can start to show people? Like, we've done this cool thing. We've got 2 backgrounds. What's the next thing? Is that your question?
It's related. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, but let's spend proper time on that, Dini. First of all, Fabian, this is absolutely fabulous. It's one of the things that surprised me is when I just went in there and put the headset on, despite it being a very different kind of visual style than I personally like, it is probably the most pleasant VR environment I've ever been in. And I'm not sure why. And I'm not saying we should keep this style at all, but there's something you've done with the faraway buildings, the distance and the closeness and the clarity that made it seem brighter and less tunnel visioned. It felt like I didn't have as much tunnel vision. So that's really fantastic. The architecture, as I already know about, is just great. I very much agree with your philosophy of going back to go forward, to start somewhere clean. Absolutely agree with you. There are a few things I'd like to change in the visual environment. There was a thin red line. Some of the text is too close. So I may have to hop on the train next week to come and have coffee with you. We can decide on that, all of us, but maybe that's a hands-on session or online, whatever. But those are details. So then let's ask the Dini question, both Dini and me. What do you feel are the things we should do now to show it to people?
The highlight. So namely that you get a piece of content, let's say a PDF, because yeah, that's the format, into like an academic document, like 2 columns basically, and then we extract a couple of lines from this 2 column. They appear on the side of it and they become manipulable. And then next to it, you have like the list of all the highlights you've done on that document. I think that would be and I, again, naively, but I don't think it's to do it at all. I'm not necessarily going to be fluid or efficient or pleasant even, but do it at all. I think we're not too far from there. So because it sounds like something people resonate with, me included, I think that's probably that would be a good next step.
I am okay with that. I'm not as excited by that because of what we did last year, which was very useful last year. But yeah, I'm totally fine that we do that. Dini, how do you feel about that?
That's fine.
Cool. What I want to see as quickly as possible is these objects in space, these knowledge objects. And I think the 3 of us need to agree. Mark posted a nice little thing on Slack today on, where is it now? Mind Palace versus exploration space and so on. I think we should kind of pick one. And because they are all just nodes in space, but in terms of use case or use or whatever, because I'm so excited to be able to move things about. First, an individual piece, because you kind of have that, but now they kind of flip a bit. How are we going to use billboarding for this? There'll be so many implementation questions. So I'm totally happy with you guys. The first thing we do, get the PDF in, do the highlighting, put the highlights to the side. Of course, I would like to be able to get the JSON from that, so that when I use that outside, I know what highlight came from what document, etc.
So can I mention something, Fabienne? This might interest you, but we're turning the visualization space in the Next into a VR experience, right? We've already done it. It's already there. We're just now fine tuning some of the models, and then we're going to be building more artifacts in that space. So these are physical artifacts that we're holding in boxes for the Next that goes with the digital files. So now we can make them available. We've been making them available as 3D models that you can manipulate, but now you can actually play with them. So I'm telling that because now Andrew, and this is funds from the university, is making it possible to manipulate these objects. Right, so now we can open up the Uncle Buddy's Fun and Funhouse box and pull out the various items in that box. We can take the beach ball, and throw it. So we're doing things like that with these objects. And so being able to, because people want to do that, they want to throw things. So we're making it possible to throw the ball, but they can't throw anything else. So now we're going to limit each artifact to particular activities that makes sense to the artifact. So now here comes a intentionality of what we do, right? You expect to see a beach ball, you expect to throw a ball. That's intuitive. This brings me to the point I'm trying to make is that you see paper and you want to do something with paper, right? You want to write on it, you want to move it around, you want to experience it in some way. So this is a thought process that I don't think a lot of people are putting much energy into. The idea is that, and I'm saying this because I think most people think, okay, we're going to have a set of activities you can do, and you can use your hands with these gestures. And those gestures work for all objects. That's the general wisdom of interactive design, right? And it goes back to even Bill Moggridge's book on interactivity, which is about this thick. What we're doing differently is saying, okay, that's not true. Each object requires a certain kind of experience. And if you have 10 different objects, then that's 10 different kinds of things that need to happen. And that's what we're playing with. Does that make sense? Am I making sense?
Now, to see if I nodded, but maybe I misunderstood, even though it does make sense to me. I'll try to share the screen again, which probably will fail. So let me know. Can you see the screen or?
Not yet.
Not yet.
So bad sign. I will try then to share a portion of the screen. Because it's something actually I did not. I did not share. Now I think you can see.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So what I did not show, but what is also new since this week. So that's the environment and the stuff in it. What is not visible is that I added this data structure called files with metadata. And the point is, until now I had the list of files. So you see the file names there. But what I added is most of it you don't care about. But for example, here, like the PDF converted, so like the presentation on non-Euclidean geometry, you can see the modification time and all that. And here for the, where was it actually? The t-shirt, then I can have the content type, like it's an image, and then it's from SVG, and the file name, where it comes from. So the point is, now, compared to the symposium or even last week, those files have metadata, and those metadata obviously can be put to good use. One of the things I did recently is to showcase that here I could have new files uploaded. You have to trust me, but they are sorted by date. So and it's only the most recent files. Instead of having like dozens of files, here you only see 2 icons, right, on the top middle. And it's based on the metadata of modification time. So this value, basically.
Mm-hmm.
All this to say that what we could do, and I believe it echoes what you were saying and doing, Dini, is we can also have that the property of the file change affordances to it. So, for example, a single image would be manipulable, but a PDF made out of a dozen of pages has a page flipper, turner, whatever, like you can pick a corner or you have an arrow on it. Or if it's a 3D model, maybe it can be tossed, like the example of the ball. And that would be enabled by this data structure, which include the metadata. And we could have, instead of content type, something equivalent like index or manipulability type or whatever we want to name it.
I love that. Yes, that's exactly right. Because then you can embed the features into that, and then that becomes metadata. So the metadata it expands to even what can be done to the object, which is a new way to look at it, metadata, right? Because when we work with print objects in metadata, we just assume all print functions the same. Anything that's got the ending of doc or PDF are kind of the same object, right? And they're flattened. But when you have objects that are like, this is a cup, and I'm going to model this, it's in VR. Oh, you can pick up the cup and pretend you're drinking it. That's a different kind of metadata. And that really is interesting. I think it's really interesting. That's sexy interesting.
And my hope also, my hope also is that this exactly the same kind of architecture applies, namely that instead of having filters or converters, you have like widgets, let's say, to put it a bit bluntly, like an arrow. If it has multiple sub items, let's say pages in a PDF or in a former PDF, then you have the arrow. But then you can compose that and you say, oh, whenever it's a multi-page document, you don't really care if it's a PDF or if it's a PPT or whatever, but the arrow is the same, so that you can have like the individual widgets as affordance for the different type of content. Could then also be like very short, like 10 lines again snippet, and then you compose them. And hopefully it's a lot of reuse, like there is not too much to it.
I'm going to say this, there's paper in this. There's a really important paper in this, because what we're trying to do with the next, which is very similar to what we're doing with this, we're dealing with physical objects, which are paper, which are putting in a virtual space, right? So we're taking something that somebody's created and they've digitized it, or they've done it in the digital world, and then we put it into the next. With the book, it's a physical object, right? Can be. In the next, we've got purely physical objects, mice, cups, all of that stuff. And the thing I've been trying to think about is how do you talk about, in terms of metadata, the mixture of physical and virtual objects? I mean, when does an object becomes virtual? When does an object move from being a digital object in a virtual space and a virtual object in a digital space? And that's when the metadata provides stuff that you can do to it, because then it's manipulable. And as soon as it's manipulable, then it's not digital anymore in the sense of flat digital objects like email or. So let me just back up for a second because I'm on a tear. But I took courses in archiving from the Society of American Archivists, thinking that I would learn something interesting from them. And all they wanted to talk about was how to handle email, how to archive web pages. And they're not talking about interactive art web pages. They're talking about your personal web page, right? And I raised my hand and I said, are we ever going to talk about multimedia web pages? And they said, no. Are we ever going to talk about virtual reality page spaces? No. And so that's where I went off in my tangent in my work, because there's so few of us. This is where Stella and I, Frode, connect, right? And so the big question for me was, how do you articulate, how do you talk about this phenomena of physical in the virtual? What makes it different? And it's all in the code, right? It makes perfect sense, but what about it in the code? What do we control in that code? And that's the description and the metadata. Because what we don't have to do with a piece of paper in the virtual space is our digital paper is to explain what you do with it. People know it's just paper, but you have to tell someone they can pick up the cup and drink out of it, and that description goes in the metadata. Am I making sense? Yeah, Fabien?
Yes, it makes sense. It's also so again. I'm trying to stay on track, but I can't help but unfold in my mind how I would implement it. And again, with the same kind of smallest kind of component that makes sense and that is reusable, so that it's not like reinventing the wheel for each of the different either file format or type of knowledge object. And also what is a little bit challenging, I think, and maybe it will emerge on its own through usage, but one of the like the principle, I guess, of hacking is a thing is what you make it do. It's not what it claims to be. So that somebody can say, oh, it's a lock and you cannot lock pick it, for example. It's a security device. And like, well, yes, and yet you can still lock pick it, or you can pick around the lock, like you find the flow in the system. And basically, you can do whatever you want with it. It doesn't have to be the use case that the designer of the lock has made. So I'm excited in the sense that it makes sense, and I think a lot could be done with it. And at the same time, I'm wondering a little bit how the composability or creativity or the hacking mindset might make that tricky. We are going to give affordances that we think make sense, but we're definitely going to miss some. So I'm wondering how, what will be the consequence of that?
Yeah. Rhoda, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I'm a bit confused because you guys keep being surprised at me saying, what are we doing? And I thought we had agreed that we were doing basically units of knowledge being moved around. And now we're kind of going into, it's a useful discussion, no question, but in terms of the implementation, one thing is to do PDFs, which I really don't think we need, but I understand you two do, so it's fine that we spend some time. But to think about three-dimensional objects as prime movers in the beginning of this, I'm not sure if is really.
I wasn't suggesting that. I'm just making a mental connection between what we're doing and a big aha for my own research. What I was asking is that, okay, now that we've got this ability to drag and drop, we've got a document, a unit of knowledge in the virtual space, and now Fabienne will start to let us be able to do things with that. Highlight all those different things we talked about. I just segued over to what I was interested in personally.
Yeah, no, I understand that, but it even goes back to the, okay, I'll give a little bit of pushback on the JPEG, on the PDF, because the things that we've been discussing and that I've been drafting and sharing to an extent is basically volumes and objects. And when you have objects, they need to be defined to have certain metadata, which is, of course, the secret sauce, Dean, exactly as you said. They also have to be defined for their basic initial look and how we interact with them. So if we have them kind of tied to initially a JPEG, which is the PDF converted with things on the side, I'm just worried, I guess, a little bit Mark Anderson style, that we're going too much into what is rather than what could be in terms of how we do the architecting.
You're the one that wanted skeuomorphic.
No, I've never asked for skeuomorphic. What I've said is we need to have different views. And one of them, because we're doing academic documents, one of them needs to have a certain narrative for an academic to follow.
Fabienne, please.
So I'll try to share my screen again, and we'll see if that addresses some of the concern. So I think you can see it again. Maybe
Yep.
I found the
Thank
trick.
you.
Super. So one thing I did not show, so I have my files and I can drag and drop a 3D model, and the 3D model is there. So I can address the concern at least that you can drag and drop PDF or images, and also 3D model, and they're still there in space. So it's also as if everything that was done at the symposium is gone. And that object, I think, is still manipulable. Namely, if you pinch in the center of that castle, you can still move it around. As you can see, the filtering, though, is done and nothing happens to it. We could give it some affordances there too, but for now it isn't. But it could be expanded. The one thing, though, I did not show, and maybe that address also is here. I'll put someone else. And basically, I did not show you before, but there are now notions of users. So here I have username Fabien, and here username someone else. And if I did not mess up, if I upload it on Fabien, it doesn't appear there. So it means in the sense of it's the same server, but it's different users, and thus the content of one can, if we want, like if we remove the user, and if I do it again, it will be there. So up, I open the 2 pages again. I take again the 3D model. I upload to whichever. Upload to whichever. I don't hear the sound, so that's not good.
Yeah, no, this is very, very good, Fabien. Yeah, it's all really, really good. It's just ironic or whatever that I have a bit of a concern that the more we deal with kind of 3D objects, the more it's kind of easy to get kind of fascinated by them. But of course, they're important in this. How should we have the dialogue going forward to what these objects should be? So I've drafted one thing, and I put it here in the chat. Is this something that we should put on our website and then comment on and then revise, or how should we deal with that part of it?
I don't know. Let me look at it.
We also need to have some initial visual designs. Dini, do you still prefer kind of a neutral background for your particular view?
Let me explain what I want, and then we should have two. We should have one that you like and one that I like, and then we're both happy. And mine is exactly what I had before. Nothing. Fabien, your hand is up.
Yeah,
I don't read this right now, folks. I'll have to read this later.
I got the bug of you hear the beep before, so I think the Fortress maybe it needed a bit of time to upload again. But the point is why it was a bit convoluted, so you did not hear the end. But the point is you can have your own environment. So, for example, the Fortress can be Fabien, and then Dini can have either a gray background, a sphere, something else. Frode, you can have something like high resolution or low res or whatever you want. But the point of managing the different user is the files, yes, of course, like your PDF is not mine, but also the environment, because one of the files that is there is called style.json or user style, I forgot. And it's like, for example, the color of the font or the type of fonts. And if you put your own file there with your name, then it will apply it just for you. And we can imagine the same in terms of converter or affordances, namely you don't want 3D models, then you don't get 3D models. If somehow that's something that could be problematic for you. So that's kind of the value, let's say, of having users is you have the space tailored to the way you want it, including the interaction, including the background, the colors, and all that, not just the content of the documents.
Yeah, that is very important, Fabien, and I greatly appreciate that. Now, two things. One is the non-plain initial environment. We should all like it, because we should easily be able to toggle between these two, as you just said. Now, Fabien, can you and I schedule half an hour over the next few days where all we do is go through some OBJs, some models, and you tell me whether they're appropriate or not, and we upload them to see if they work, and you tell me, no, too many polygons or whatever, and just do a bit of window dressing?
We could do this, but I'd rather spend 2 hours or 4 hours, not 2, and that you can do it on your own. I can still do the 30 minutes after to give any kind of feedback, but I think it's more powerful if if somebody else is in your shoes and they want to do that too, and I don't need to be there for them.
Why don't we do a session that of course, we record all sessions, but we record it to make it public so people can get the same learning as I would get from you?
Sure. Yeah, good idea.
Thank you. So then the next thing is also, we've agreed on this PDF thing for now. It is definitely good exploration, but I think the dialogue in the community is more around a murder wall or a knowledge graph or a map or that kind of stuff. So can we spend a few minutes on that before we let the hordes in?
We do have a few minutes. Can I go back to your document? I'm looking at interactions.
Sure.
And we're calling it a volume, right? And when I think of the word volume, I think of 3D, right? We can't call something a volume if it doesn't have depth. So it comes with an assumption, that word.
Well, a book is also a volume.
It's got depth.
Yeah, it does have depth, and I'm most certain. I mean, I agree with you wholly, but I believe that something that is in 3D space, like a thin sheet of paper, is a valid object in 3D space. Doesn't always have 3 dimensions on it, but it most certainly should be the default. 100% agree with you. But just to go a little bit specific before we go in, do you guys agree that one of the first interactions we need to do is you're sitting at your desk, the physicality of the top of the desk is indicated somehow. You're sitting far enough away from a computer screen, no laptop is open, that you can move about freely without worrying about hitting something. And what we need to do initially is, here's a bit of knowledge that I want over here. This one I want over there. That should be one of the first things, and how that looks and feels. And then the second thing should be further controls, hand, arm, for doing bigger things.
Yeah, we did that last year. Anything we did last year is fair game for this year, right?
Yeah, but I really would prefer not to have lasers. I would prefer to touch the items.
Okay.
Or how do you feel about that?
That's fine. I mean, everything we're doing in the next is all hand done. I wasn't even imagining lasers, but we already can move things around, right? I mean, that's what we did in year 1, like week 2.
Yes, but we spend a lot of time trying to polish it. And one thing I think we learned is that if it's a seated experience, then being able to touch it or to laser it there's no real informational difference, because if something is further away, it has to be bigger to be legible anyway. So unless we're talking about a background layer, which of course we are considering it as well, the primary interactions really should be pinch without a laser to move. That's something I think, yes, we had it last year, but I think it needs a lot of interface polish to be really elegant and smooth.
That's fine, but I think we don't have to like ask ourselves, what actions we're going to take. We already know we want to be able to take something in our hands and do something with it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we want to touch physical objects. That's the first thing. So
yes.
Touch it, right? Move it.
Yes.
Now interact with it by doing something to the text itself. I mean, there's so I guess let me break this up into 2 parts. Interacting with the object itself, but then also doing something to the text on that object. That's 2 different things. We've already accomplished this and some of this. We just need to move forward.
Absolutely, 100% aligned.
And can I mention one more thing? What Fabienne's done is great, because because one of the problems we had was, where do we get this stuff and how do we get it in there easily? And he solved that problem. Bam, done. Got it in there. Now we just start overlaying the things we've already decided, right?
Yes.
And that is, move it around, carry it with us. If we're going to have that walkway, carry that object with us as we're walking. You know, if we're going to walk, if we're going to sit, then we have the object sitting in front of us. Now we're going to do something with our fingers, maybe, you know. So I think that, I mean, what Fabienne's shown us is great.
Yes, to save time, I double everything Dini just said. I would maybe break it down slightly differently, and this is a positive thing. We import or start with some kind of a map, whatever it is. But even the act of moving it, like as I said earlier, we have to decide, because right now they kind of flip in Fabienne space. Are we going to use billboarding so it always faces us, right? That's one thing. What you said, Dini, about changing either the text on the object or the metadata in the object, goodness gracious, that's going to be a huge fun thing to do. You know, it may be that we actually do a gesture to open it up like a box or unfurl. There can be millions of ways. So that's going to be amazing. I agree with you so much. Also, using the table. So if you have an object that's a bit big, you should be able to flap it on the table so you can rest your hand while you're pointing at things. That's going to be a big thing. And then the ARM menus. And then much more, Fabienne. But anyway, go ahead. There can be millions of fun things.
So one of the principles of some of what I started before, also Sloan or even Future of Text, is to show what's hidden. So namely that you have those code snippets in the environment. And the goal is obviously not to scare people off with code. It's just because code is powerful. It lets you do stuff. And I think hiding it away to make it look slick and then forget that you can use code to manipulate is problematic. So one of the things was, I'm going to show you how the sausage is made, kind of in the hope that you'll get excited and then apply it. And so we can do the same here in the sense that I don't know if we love metadata, but we certainly sound obsessed by it. So one we can imagine here, let's say a knowledge update in space, or a little a document, for example, and then you would have the metadata next to it. And then maybe based on the metadata, the one that have an affordance dedicated to it, for example, it's part of a book that would be flipping pages because like number of pages as metadata, and thus up here like flipping pages. And we can literally show it. We don't need to hide it, I think. Again, especially because it's not a product, but it's prototyping and we're exploring. We can still, let's say in a month or week, if it's like, oh, it's overwhelming and people are scared of it somehow, once it's shown, it's easier to hide. But if we have this like expert mode or whatever, I think we can do that relatively easily. Namely, show the metadata, show the affordance linked to the metadata. And I think for us also to not hide how it's done, help us build more. Yes.
I think we need gloves. Something like that. I think it should be no metadata, no code, nothing. Simple, clean, opposite of everything you said. However, make it really, really easy through, let's say, wrist, arm, finger, whatever menu that says, you know, matrix mode, maybe. We'll think so. I'm just being joking for the sake of this discussion, but something where you see the underlying reality. So you can easily toggle in and out of it. Right? So
yeah, I love the idea of modal popping up and showing you the metadata for anything you want to see. I like the idea of showing code, Fabienne. I think that's important, especially if it's all open web code languages anyway, right? We want people to be able to use this stuff. Before we get people in here, I do want to mention in your document photo under context, I would add now the category of interactive, let's see, how do we call it? Description of the interactive quality. So interactive qualities.
are you talking now about volume or object?
In your knowledge volume design page,
Yep.
page 2, you've
Yep.
got context and you have all the creator person, creator software, time, place, appearance. After appearance, before view information and software should be interactive description or what did I just say? Interactive.
Affordances, basically.
That's fine, whatever. I want people to know what they can do with that object.
Yeah, no, that's great. The view information and software was supposed to be that, but I've added what you said because it is clearer and better, so thank you. Yeah, I've updated it.
Okay, I see what you mean. Okay, no, I just thought that was like, okay, that makes sense. Okay. Fabienne, your hand's up.
Briefly, for highlighting what will probably happen. So the red light you see in the demo right now, it's not a bug. It's because it's for highlight. It was a trick in order to use like the center of the head. It's not great, but technically it works, and you can even like export the visual highlights over text. But what's most likely going to happen, so I still need to think about it, is like you will have, like that's your hand, you'll have this index, probably the right hand index at first, and you'll have a mini laser, like probably couple of centimeters. And then when you will bring it close to a surface, that's going to highlight the text. So you basically touch or nearby it, and then you, as if you were drawing on top of the text. So you will probably have a laser in order to select, because that's something that I think is relatively intuitive and I think easy to implement, and we don't really need to explain. I'm not sure. It probably also means, let's say, if you have, again, a document there, there'll be like a highlighted metadata that there is text in it, and then affordance relative to text, which is highlightable, basically. And if that's the case, then you will have the laser at the tip of the index, most likely.
Okay.
Okay, so Fabian, that's the kind of stuff we're probably going to talk about with the team now. But I suggest that for the benefit,
Can I mention one thing? I need to give you some information for people come in. So I did get the bill for the shipping, the final bill. It cost $106 to ship it. It was $544 of customs and taxes. Yeah.
Danny,
So-
if you can finagle that out of our budget, I'm
We
very.
did. I did. I took it out of the budget. And but that's the news is that that cost $664 to ship it. Which was, I don't know what you paid. When I shipped yours, it was $216 roughly, but I'm sure you paid taxes when it arrived. What did you pay? Nothing. Okay, so Brussels is expensive.
Oh, no, but hang on, hang on. You didn't send the headset to me. You sent a component of it. What did you send?
Okay, well, that's what it was then. Okay.
Yeah, it was still
Also-
expensive ship. But really quickly, also before we come in, Fabian, please give me your Apple ID. I can add you as family because maybe then you can access the store. Sorry, Dini, I just
I was
remembered.
going to say, that was what I was going to tell you. He can't access the Apple Store, and that's a problem. So he needs to get his hands on the Apple Store. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So thank you, everybody.
So,
Bye.
where are you going?
I'm going to my lab.
Okay, so Dini, the discussion with the guys coming in now will only be about some kind of things on a wall. We're not going to talk about PDF at all. That's the three of us. Otherwise, it gets way too messy. Okay.
No PDF. It's like this. Tell
No,
Mark
no,
I said,
no. I think I hate the idea of doing it now, but I agree with you guys. It's necessary and useful. People need to experience it. It may be useful practically as well, but in terms of the wider dialogue, I think it really needs to be blah blah blah. Anyway, love you guys. Look forward
Bye.
to Monday. And Monday also, in addition to talking about the ACM, we can also talk about who to invite for the book and all that kind of fun stuff.
sounds good. Right. Oh, Foda, we need to contact Mar. I'm going to send her a note real fast and make sure that we are on for the 24th of October, Friday.
Yeah. Also,
Not send us.
yeah, no, thank you. That's important. Ismail will most likely be here in February, so I can go through things with him as well in person.
Okay, well, I need to contact her. So let me do that
Yeah.
now. Okay, I'll
Thank you.
CC you. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Good morning.
Peter, did you ever watch Pinky and the Brain?
Never.
What? Well, how about you, Fabian?
I'm not going to sing it, but yes.
Pinky. I'm just thinking about what are we doing today? Taking over the world. I just love that. Anyway, so I'm now paying for some of my programming using crypto. How cool is that? Right. Sorry, guys. I just have to do that for a second because it's actually the head guy's birthday today.
Happy birthday then.
Yeah, it's so bizarre, that whole story. Huh? Oh, they've changed the whole how to pay. Okay, forget it. I'm not going to waste our time on that. Regulations change for that all the time. Let me see if Mark Anderson is joining us. I got some messages from Alan in response, which was lovely. So we hope to get some more dialogue with him again. Yeah, so Hi, Rob. Just before we start, I just have some behind-the-scene questions for Fabienne. Fabienne, we can all go into what you've made now, like I just did, right?
Yes.
I have one request before we go in. When I put the headset on and enter, the text stuff is in my face. Can you move it back half a meter? Like the cursor and the initial stuff, it's like, wow. Hey, Mark. Okay, so just to update you guys, so Fabienne and Dini and I have some secret work that I'm not going to tell you anything about because it involves PDFs. Oops, I just told you. Yeah, indeed. Oh, you're doing exactly what Dini did, Rob. So just to give you a summary, because I don't want to waste your time for discussion around something there's nothing to discuss. They are working on, Fabienne doing the building and Dini kind of designing a PDF into the WebXR experience. Hopefully you can highlight, pull some things off to the side that can then be available outside. So in a sense, even though it's going to be a lot of work for Fabienne, it is a given. It is an initial experience. What I hope we can discuss is the step beyond that, which for clarity, I will say what I want, and I think Fabienne and Dini agrees with. Fabienne can interrupt me if I'm wrong. How the stuff comes in is irrelevant. Fabienne will show you in a minute the reality, but in terms of our discussion, it's irrelevant because it's amazing what he's built. You have knowledge bits, objects in front of you, murder wall or whatever, and thank you, Mark, for what you wrote on Slack. That's the 100% pertinent, what these things are. So now we have to decide, well, first of all, I would prefer no lasers. Unless something is in the background, there's no, and this is what we learned, right? What we learned is that because something is far away to be legible, guess what? It has to be bigger. Something we all knew, but now we can feel it. So that means that the things, we should be able to drag them, place them around, do our thinking, and even that will have a huge amount of interaction things, because one of the things Dini highlighted is if you want to change the title of the thing or see what's inside it, metadata-wise, that's an interaction and a half. We also talked about how Fabienne wants the code to be visible. I don't, and that's fine. How do we make it possible to toggle the two, right? Are we going to do a hand menu, a wrist menu, an arm menu, all of that stuff? So basically our discussion is, how can we move object things around in space to satisfy all our wildest dreams? Right, Fabienne?
Right-ish. So I didn't say just the code, I also said the metadata. And some of the affordances that such metadata do afford or not, with the idea that showing how the sausage is made should be comforting, not scary or like sci-fi looking. It's like, hey, it might look cool or not, but at least if you want to dig in and see how it's done, you can. And thus, if you want to modify it, you can. It doesn't mean, though, that you're going to have code all over the place and in your face. So it's going to indeed be toggleable, that if you don't want to see how it's done, for whatever reason, you don't have to. But it will be either on by default or off by default, but at the very least toggleable. Yeah, I think it's quite important not to say, hey, it's a polished product. Also, the same way that some people, for example, when they do first phases of design, they do it with like a fat, I don't know the name, but like a
crayon,
pencil, a crayon. But yeah, that is very
crayon.
Harsh, because then you can see it's not serious yet. Like the number of decisions to say, hey, this is final, is not there yet. So I think that's also like to highlight or remind people of the fluidity of it. And a little detail, but in terms of a laser, we don't necessarily need laser, because I think we're too used to mimicking the real world where we have laser pointers. Here, what we can do is, if we have, let's say, a document that is too far to reach, it's over there, we can have a mini version of it that is right there. You can have a platter with a mini version of it, and then you pick it because you're in the train or whatever, and you cannot walk there. The laser would be like the way we've done it so far, but to be honest, I think it's a little bit too literal. So we can go a little bit crazier without going all the way to like non-Euclidean space if we don't want to. And usually mini version clone nearby. It's a quick, easy way to solve that kind of problem.
Mark, do you mind if I just add to that real quick? Thank you very much. Two things. This whole thing about interfaces being rough pencils or crayons, I think that's a little bit, it depends on what you're building. There are many ways to show that this is not a final polished product. So we can talk about that. There is a level of showing comfort rather than, oh my God, do I have to understand this? So that's absolutely fine for discussion. And also, yes, of course, laser for far away. And yes, of course, advanced laser. No, I completely agree. That's going to be exciting. But for the basic stuff, just to what's right in front of you to do that, even that I think is going to be tricky. So let's keep the dialogue going. Mark, thank you for your patience.
I was just going to say, sorry, stick my hand down for a remember. I certainly don't see that being able to see metadata shouldn't necessarily be upsetting to anyone, because I think the reality is that the way it would plan out is to be modal to the work you're doing, and this was the point I was getting at in the point I put in Slack, that we bring to the plate, even ourselves in different times of work, a different concept of what we're doing in the space. We might be doing experimental stuff, we might be doing more formal diagramming. So what something means to us is somewhat contingent upon our general assumptions about the space and what we're doing. What that means is that sometimes you might want to see the metadata because it's actually it's more important than anything else. Sometimes you might just want to see literally an abstract icon, and sometimes you might very much want to see textual content. I'd make a bet that you're not going to have the same thing all the time, or the utility that you'll get from the space will be less.
That's exactly the point. We are all entirely in agreement. I just gave a link to how you can see this yourself in the chat. I find it surprisingly pleasant.
Peter?
Yeah, for getting things that are distant, how hard would it be to do a Mr. Fantastic kind of effect, so if I'm reaching for something that's out of my normal reach, my hand would continue to move towards it in the VR environment until it reached it so that I could grab it, and then pull it all the way back to where I am? Because I know that Curtis Hickman did some experiments with that sort of thing at the Void, so I'm wondering whether the tech stack you're using would make it feasible to do that, or whether the tech stack you're using would make that a nightmare that we shouldn't even waste our time thinking about.
So it's definitely feasible because I did it by mistake in the past. So I was like here, I teleported there, and my hands stayed there, and I was waiting, and the hand like that was 10 meters away moved. I was like, what is? And what is actually the weirdest is that it's not that bad. Like you would think, oh, my hand is far away, I don't have control over it. It's still a little bit weird, which is also why whenever it can be like a hand that pick a thing and it's your hand one-on-one, it's easier. So I recommend not to do it. But if it's a special situation, indeed, that, oh, the document is too far and either I don't have access to it, which would be bad, or I have something worse, for example, laser, then we can definitely do it. We can have basically, I didn't do it, but I was thinking about it, like where you have your hand in front of you, you have your arm, and you basically would have a slider, and you said like, if you do this, you push your hand away for a certain distance. So you can adjust basically the distance of your virtual hand to your physical hand. That being said, again, like the further it is from the one-to-one mapping, the trickiest it is to control. It's a little bit if you're when fishing, it's at the end of the pole. Yeah, you'll manage, but it's not the same as it's like a chopstick or something like this. So technically feasible. To see how efficient it actually is. Probably what works quite well, there is a game called Cubism from Thomas von Buell, and what he does is you have floating puzzle pieces, and when you point at it, maybe you have the hand open, and I guess it's a vector from the wrist to one of your finger. It highlight the piece. So for example, it's going to change color ever so slightly. And thus, you know the piece is selected, and then you do a gesture like this, like you grab it and then it pulls closer. And I think maybe when you close your fist, it keeps on coming all the way until it reaches your hand, and then you can pick it and move it away. Hi, Edgar.
Hi. Peter and Fabienne, that was amazing. That's that kind of discussion we need to have much more, because like with a telephoto lens, it's much harder to maintain focus because the slightest bit wobbles. But Peter, I think you have earlier said something like maybe your eyes actually travel with it. And one thing I found is that moving with the joystick in XR for me is okay if I'm going straight ahead. The turning is what makes me wobbly. So I can imagine reaching a hand and maybe even doing a come here gesture. Something, doing a thing like you said, Peter, where now the hand flying with my view and my body's left behind. There are all these kinds of amazing things we can try. I think it's going to be incredible. So just having the notion of the main work for now being knowledge bits in space in a volume, first of all, manually. By the way, Fabienne, I texted you on your iPhone because it was the easiest, a view from the Vision Pro showing you what I mean about the text. And I suggest, guys, if you want to, even right now, on the website, Fabienne's system is active. You can try it. It does a lot less, but there's two things to say. One is, even though it's not at all my visual preference right now, it looks amazing. It just looks like a space that is clear and clean and has volume. It doesn't look like one of those constrained views. And also, Fabienne, would you like to maybe talk a little bit about the companion aspect? I think everybody knows it, but you've expanded it and it's absolutely amazing.
Yes, amazing it is indeed. So I'll share my screen. I'll try. And let me know, please, if... so I'll try to share the entire screen. Yes,
sorry, to answer Mark's relevant question, it's on the link that I just gave you. However, if you go to the website top, then you go to XR authorship, and there is a link to experimental view. So sorry about that being a bit hidden. Okay, back to you, Fabienne.
So can you see my screen?
Looks beautiful.
You can see it?
Yes.
So, okay. So you have the environment on the left. As I mentioned, the sci-fi kind of bright environment. It's mostly to showcase that it's a new version. The biggest difference with before is that if you take a document, first before it was only on my hard disk. So namely, if you were not there on my computer, you could not send documents basically. And now if I take an image and I drag and drop it here on the upload part, it's there. If you had the headset on, or if you were on the URL, you could see it. And if I do it for a 3D model, it should, it appears there. And for something a little bit more complex. So there is no more Dropbox in the middle. There is, it's all self-hosted on my website, beneteau.fr. So there is no intermediary with their potentially changing API or builds or non-open source software. So that's all open. And one thing that can be done also is things that needs to be converted. So if I do it with a PDF, I receive my little notification, it's been uploaded, and I receive another notification that it's been converted. I'll show you what the notifications are. You don't necessarily see it when you're not in developer mode, let's say, but those are all the notifications, because I have now a notification server called NTFY. And the first notification is the files have been uploaded, if you want. And the second type of notification, so I can subscribe by different topic, is the conversion. Here I had the PDF and it's been converted to JPEG. And that's why now I have the content of a document right there. What I think it's important is the architecture aspect behind it. And it's something also I discussed with some of you, and especially Mark a few times, the hope that people, not just me, will bring their own type of content, not just the actual content, namely the image or the PDF, but like PowerPoint or EPUB or like this, their own kind of extension or type of file. And here is an example of what I call filters, because they are sequential. They're applied one after the other. You don't need to understand the code. What's important is that it's a dozens of lines of code maximum, and most of it, let's say all this, is boilerplate. That's what matters, namely that you get a content type, which is an image. It ends with SVG, so you assume that image is an SVG, and then you do something to it. With here, it's just like you say something in the console. So if I upload an SVG and I go in the console, I take this SVG, I drag and drop it, and here I have it is an SVG image. So very exciting rather, but it's to show that in literally 3 lines of code you have this. So what I hope people would do is copy that kind of things, the filter, make their own for, let's say, an EPUB, and then it would do something to it or with it. And it's the same thing on the back end, namely that instead of being filters, there are converters. And what you would do is that same, it's short, so a dozen of lines of code, and same, there is here even one line that matters. This line, which is to say, use the convert command, take the input, add JPEG at the end, and that's it. So you convert it. And that somebody would copy this and say, hey, I don't care about PDF. They're evil. I want EPUB, or I want text.txt files. And then they would do something like this. So the hope is that then people share this kind of converters on the back end or filters on the front end in order to bring more content, again, types of content, and do whatever they feel like within that environment. And then the same thing as before, like you can grab the corner of the thing to move it around. But yeah, I think that's about it.
It's wonderful.
One little detail actually I forgot is that there is like a username optional. So namely that if I do, I will not show you because I think you get the idea, but if I append the parameter username and, for example, Fabien at the end, my stuff is shown only to me. If Mark, you do it, it will only be shown to Mark. If you don't put anything, then you have a global view. And the hope with this is that you put, of course, your documents and they're for you. But also if you put like a 3D model for the background, if you say, hey, I hate this kind of fake sci-fi low poly, I want something totally different, then you do it. If you want like the style, like the font would be purple instead of white, you do this. So you configure also not just the content you put in, but how they are presented. So that's the last bit.
As an aside, on the authorship page, I have put up now a link to knowledge volumes and objects, kind of things that we might discuss what's inside. Mark, please go ahead.
I just maybe hearing the last thing that Fabio was saying about, how it's styled. When I was writing about, the different ways we sort of think about spaces, and I was thinking about the fact that so one problem about collaboration in an XR space is it's a bit like two people looking at a bit of conceptual art, so non-figurative art. And person A is explaining the picture. Person B hasn't got a clue because person A is talking about the picture in here, not in the context of the one on the wall. And that's, I think, one of the problems we're sort of experiencing unintentionally in XR. But it did occur to me that I don't know how far you can push this, but in a sense, if you have if in some way you had a blob of metadata that as a user you provided, saying that how I expect to see things in this space looks like that. In principle, that say Rob and I could be in the same room looking at the same volume, but actually visually experiencing it in a quite different way, but in a way that hopefully is actually useful to us, because what it's actually doing is it's removing ambiguity rather than adding it. My first thought is probably you'd want to keep things in the same position to start with, or at least until we've got the hang of it. But if one person sees textual labels and another person sees, I don't know, orange squares, that alone might actually be quite interesting. I'm not saying we rush to do it. I just put the idea out there, either because it's completely rubbish and won't work, or because it's something we can noodle on. So thank you.
I think it's one of the key points would be if it's a synchronous collaboration or not. Like if it's asynchronous, I think if everybody sees things differently, it's probably fine. If there is like a way to reconcile after. If it's synchronous and things are not quite literal, namely we see the same things, then I think it would probably lead to more confusion. One way though, where this could to potentially cope with it or adjust with this is the augmented reality view. Namely, now if you move your head in that environment, you'll have like little parentheses or crochet, and you could imagine having like basically an augmented view that is specific to you. And I think that would help that there is like a unique virtual world out there that we all agree on because it is the same, but that what is augmented is personal, and thus we can still like tailor it to you. But that because if it's synchronous collaboration, you probably need some basis for discussing it.
Just quickly, Freddie, if I may, just to finish out, two things to point out. One is I want to make I'm not raising this because I this is absolutely what I must and want to have. I just thought it was an interesting idea, and actually it grew out from the notion that even within a session, I may want to constantly change the way that objects appear to me. In a sense, I want them to identify in a different way. I want them to visualize a different aspect of what they are based on the metadata they have. And hopefully that just pulls the background to it together. Thanks. Sorry, Fred, go ahead. I
am going to head by repeating what you said in a different way, because I think that's super important. When we get to when Fabian removes the text from my face, and we do the few little tweaks, and we get rid of the red line and do a few things like that, where we're kind of comfortable on the space. And Fabian and I will spend a little bit of time where he will teach me how to customize the environment in a recorded way, so we can have that on our website for everybody. When you're sitting in your severed environment or whatever fun thing you might want to start with, it is so important what you're saying, Mark, because one thing, like I talked about on Monday, one thing I would love is for you to change glasses to have different views, right? View spec shouldn't have to be something you type in a toolbar at the bottom of the screen, right? Now we can really start doing that. And like even changing clothes, right? Because you want the bodily interactions to be different. Changing gloves for visual, because it's cool, but also for the different controls. Changing the glasses, maybe changing your focus. Here's the thing, Fabian, what do you think of this? Foreground, background. You change the focus on your non-existent glasses. Right? So now you're looking further away. Now you're looking closer. The world is quite literally our dinner. So, we can start doing craziness like that. But first, I want to be able to reach out and touch a piece of knowledge and move it there and not worry about it flipping about or going funny. And it's of a visual style that is quite plain, unassuming, clear. And then we start creatively fighting over what we want.
Because I'm obviously missing. I'm not quite clear how it looks and where it is are connected.
We're saying exactly the same thing, Mark. I think, because I think that what you're saying about you should be able to change your view, all aspects of it, even if you're sharing that data with someone else.
Okay. No, what I meant was you just said at the end, I should be able to just move something and it should move without any sort of changing how it looks. I'm thinking.
No, that's not what I meant. What I meant.
Okay. I'm sorry. I misunderstood. Yeah.
Currently in Fabien's world, if you touch a piece of floating text, it has this tendency to flip about. So that's, for the, all respectfully, Fabian, for all intents and purposes, a bug, right? So but there is what is the difference between a bug and a feature? In this environment is incredibly fluid. So being able to grab a thing, first of all, what does that mean? Does that mean pinching exactly on it? Does that mean I have to pinch in a specific spot? Should I be able to pinch in different places to do a rotation rather than a move? Should I see some kind of armature appear so that I can do things easier? These are the myriads of questions of, up here I have things to do with Mark Anderson, but no, he's with the people. He goes over here, then I move that there. And we need to discuss then your very important point of, if you're in a meeting with Rob, Mark, and you have this, this, and this, and he wants it different, right? How do you reconcile that? What I think we should work towards is he can, okay, when I drive my Tesla, I'm an autopilot. If I want to change lane without arguing with my car, I just change lane and it gets a bit annoyed at me, it beeps, it flashes, and then I change lane, right? So it's an override. So if, let's say maybe Rob wants to override your view, maybe he has to tug a little harder, and the system somehow says, okay, this is not going to be reflected for Mark because he's locked it, but it will for you. But then maybe the whole idea of having glasses or whatever, he can choose to see your view at any time. Mr. Wasilko from New York.
Yes, Fabian, when we touch things, what's the granularity there? Do we get coordinates within the object where the contact happened, or do we just know that the overall object was touched? Because it'd be really convenient if we could distinguish between touching, say, the left third of the object, the middle third of the object, or the right third of the object, especially for doing outlining, so that I could drag something to the back side to know that I want to go under, or drag it to the left side to have it appear above it in the outline.
So right now we grab the center of the object because it's extremely cheap. Namely, we can have hundreds of objects and it's still not a problem. What we can do is really, for example, if that's going to be the next exploration. Let's say if that's an object, you want to be able, for example, to do highlighting to say, hey, I touched there. Why I looked there and then highlight the whole thing. But that's a lot costlier than just like comparing the position between, let's say, the middle of the pinch and the position of the center of the object. That's very cheap, computationally speaking. And if you have hundreds of objects and then you check where you hit that object, I mean, maybe on the Vision Pro it's okay, but I mean, it's probably not great. So probably what will be is like a switch from one, namely if you're close enough to it, so to the center of the object, then there is like a high resolution kind of interaction where then you would get the intersection between, let's say, a raycast from the tip of your finger to that object so that you know you're there specifically. But it's possible to do both. And there are ways also like Octree where the kind of structure, the data structure underlying the 3D world still makes intersection efficient. So we could try also that from the start. That being said, for our topic, because we talk about text, if we have like walls of text, like I have my bookshelf there, we definitely don't want, like, for example, to do the interaction with the inside of the book. Like if you were to go through all the pages and select all the text through it, I mean, it would be amazing, I guess, in a way, interesting at least, but that would be ridiculously expensive. So we probably have to find a pragmatic way to do it. But it's possible, sorry to keep it short, it's possible to have where you hit the object.
Mm-hmm.
Fabian, I see you've changed it, but I'm going to show you, I think you may have changed a different aspect than what I was talking about. So I'm sending you a 4-second video.
Yeah.
But also in terms of what you're talking about, it's a really, really interesting question, Peter, because Fabian answered in terms of the computational side of things. There's also the human side of things, meaning the first mouse had obviously 3 buttons, as you all know, but that was too complicated for the user at the time. So being able to different place touch an item in XR, in the beginning probably should be just touch it anywhere and something happens. So then we get also the notion of different gloves or environments or levels or whatever. So maybe we could at one point have it so that only foreground items have that level of detail, etc. So thank you for bringing that up, Peter. That's the kind of question we need to get our teeth into. Fabienne, the HUD is nearly hidden. Yes, I saw that. But there is some initial text that is just right here. I should have probably noted down what it said.
No, but I know what you mean. Okay.
That's never happened before. Yes.
I think I know. I'll try right away, and then you'll say that it's wrong. Let's see.
JXR location reload. JXR save to that stuff. By the way, guys, having Fiber, of course, it's great for uploading the summaries of our discussions, but going between the headset, doing a video, and having it on my computer without thinking about it was unthinkable before. So even within the environment, everything's changed. And I think that's incredibly relevant to our discussion, because there's speed and time for things. And in the near future, we will have instant, massive volumes of information from anywhere in the world. So yeah. Oh, sorry, Mark. I'm just waffling. Please go ahead.
I was just quickly thinking, and I don't think this will be controversial. I think after what's been discussed before is that the comment about, well, yes, we don't want to make things sort of too complicated in terms of the objects we're trying to interact with. I think that also validates the approach of trying to build a quite rich information infrastructure that we may not necessarily see inside the objects, simply because to start with, we probably want quite primitive things to deal with because we're exploring the sort of the interface with it, literally how we interact with it. But we already know, in a sense, beyond that, there are things that we will want to have in the space, even if we can't access them all at the time. But we know we're going to need them, so we can build ahead with that bit and catch up with our visualization part in due course, and that will buy us some time. And also, just quickly give this is not a thread jump, but just so in case people didn't see it, I also noodled a bit on the annotated bibliography, and I've stuck something in Slack, and hopefully what's there will be self-evident. So back to you, Fabienne.
Just really quickly, Fabienne, Mark, what you put in Slack on the annotated bibliography was phenomenally useful. Thank you. All right. Sorry, Fabienne.
No worries. So I'll have to go soon, but so I fixed, I hope, what you asked for, Frode. Refresh the page and you'll see. The problem, though, by doing this, and it's half my fault, let's say, or half me being the problem there, is the whole point of having that text, which is code in the space, is that it can also be moved. The problem is now it doesn't save, so it's not persistent, so that if you refresh the page, it's back where you started, basically. But the whole thing about this space being fluid or malleable is that you don't like it there at the beginning, then you grab it, push it back, remove the headset, and it's where you want it, because maybe somebody wants that text, the instructions, basically, much closer. So the instructions themselves and the code to change, because it's not persistent right now, I manually move it. But the whole point of it is that I don't want to do this because maybe you like it a totally different way.
But Fabienne, I agree. It's perfect now for me. I would like it a little bit closer, by the way, but that's a detail. The point of it is, it was literally on my eyes. I had to move back to even see it.
Yeah.
So I agree with your being able to move things and all of that, but now I can go in here and look at this space. But a final question, aligning the virtual desk you have here with my physical desk, is there a mechanism we can relatively soon do that?
Change what? The desk?
In Quest, when you do the Quest seated room type thing, it asks you to take the controller and touch the floor, right?
Yes.
Which is very useful. Is there something in your environment where, because you have a desk, you can do some action, and then when your fingers or whatever touch the physical desk, it now knows, okay, it's aligned.
Could be.
Okay. Because it's so weird. Like some of your floating texts, I have no idea what it means, and I'm not really bothered, but I really suggest all of you put on your headset, go to that link, and go into it. It has a really nice feel to it, a really nice clarity. So I look forward to putting these knowledge objects in there, and then we can have these discussions, which are of course recorded, on how we should interact with them and view them, and stress you out with programming work.
Not stressed.
Oh, Rob, you're going to do it in the vision. I look forward to hearing your comments. Oh, yes. Hi, Rob.
I'm going to try.
Cool. Fabian, did you test it so far in the vision or the Quest?
Neither, I think.
What have you tested it in?
I mean, it's mostly the back end, like the uploading part and the user thing. So I tested on my desktop mostly. I don't even. I mean, I tested different versions. I don't remember if I.
Fabian, put it on your head. I want to hear what you say about your own work in the vision. Do
Okay.
it, man. And then we'll let you go for dinner. How's that?
I mean, I will go for dinner anyway. But
Yes. Mark, Peter, you have your headset. You want to try it?
Just check it's. I think mine is just powering up at the moment. So I've been buried in something else. So I haven't had I've had the system off for a bit.
Oh, Rob, you got the same headband thing that I did. Makes a big difference, doesn't it?
Yeah. I got another one by mistake, so I have two. The other one's Chinese and cheap.
Right. And this one is Chinese and expensive.
Right.
Oh, that's how you tell the differences.
so
Anyway. Okay. I'm not sure how to get it, so I'm.
Futuretextlab.info. I aim to do this year, same as we did last year, on that page, when you go to authoring in XR, there should be a link to the current demo.
Yes, I will have to actually think about how to handle this, because I usually have one single page, which works now. And if people want to try it in the future, they will have like the live experiment. So I don't know if that will be really helpful for them.
Oh. Safari.
Powering up now.
Okay, fine. I'll put it on too, just so we can have a screenshot. We all look quite moronic. Peter, please put your headset on when you feel like it. I mean, your camera on is what I was trying to say. By the way, you guys who use the Vision, I bought this cheap little insert that goes inside the Vision to protect it when it's being transported. Not sure why Apple didn't include that. Highly recommended. Peter, are you going to turn your camera on? Will that be okay?
No, surrounded by food.
Okay. Mark, please put it back on so I can take the screenshot.
Sorry, yeah, I'm just trying to find what page authorship. Sorry, I got the wrong.
Oh, sorry about that.
Wrong page. Right, here we go. Let's try again.
Okay, everybody look straight at the camera just for one. Look at me. 1, 2, 3. Fantastic. And that's your new profile pic.
Yeah, I mean, excellent work myself. I'm impressed.
There is something special about it, isn't there?
It is very short, very readable. Like the text being dropped like on that pure gray, and So yeah.
Yeah, and also the thing we had with the Mozilla place where you could walk around and like a penguin and all of that stuff, even though superficially it's roughly the same style, this
Are we
is
doing current live XR or experimental view?
hang on a second. Hang on a second. Experimental view, sorry.
Hey.
Experimental view. Got it.
Yeah, no, what I wanted to highlight also, maybe I didn't mention it, but it feels a bit like a regression in terms of features compared to the Symposium. Like there is less millions of stuff flying around. But I hope what I was showing with the terminal and the different code example is that it's a simpler and a neater basis for a lot more, basically, expansions in terms of conversions and filters and affordances. One thing I didn't show was the metadata attached to all the icon representing files and the content. So I think it looks like going slightly backward compared to September, or actually, the Symposium November. But it's I will sleep better at night, basically, because I know the code base is much shorter, cleaner, and thus should be more reliable and easier to build on for not just me, but anybody who wants to expand on it.
Should I be? So I got into the fully immersive thing.
Yep.
Should I have had hands or controllers in that?
Hands.
Okay. Because and how do I once I get back in? What anyway? I can't get out. So at the moment I'm stuck in the headset. That's fine. I live with that. And how do I move around in the environment?
You physically do. You don't.
Okay, fine. Understood. Okay, I'll experiment with that. Yeah, super. Very nice.
Yeah, we're initially focused on primarily seated experience.
That's absolutely fine. Well, indeed I was, but no, it's just sort of making sure I've got the correct basic assumptions right, and I can go and then I can go and play with that in slower time. So that's super. I mean, for what it's worth, Fabian, it doesn't feel like a regression to me. I mean, because the real power is actually more in all the other bits that are going on and the ability to move things in and out. I think that is really interesting. So one of the ideas that came to mind as we were talking today was a sort of experiment such that, for instance, thought experiment. I, for some reason, have been asked to go and research some information for Rob. I essentially give him some objects, some information that I will drop into whether into a shared, where there's both in the environment, him just there. And the exercise that I have in mind, so where we get to is we do something where the person creating it, which in this case would probably be me, would put in metadata such that it would enable Rob to basically see things. So he could say, well, show me, yeah, fine, you give me all these objects, now show them on a time range or something like that. I think that will be quite interesting because it's part of the thing of passing the baton. So in other words, the information I would be creating wouldn't be created as in the sort of mental context of a time series. I would just put a date into it, knowing that the person who's going to get it in the end would find that interesting. So it goes from person A to person B, and person B is then able to view that data in the environment in a way that it wasn't created in its original place. So we get a nice transformation and a handover between two people. I think that's an exercise we could probably try at a moment when it's sensible, when things are a state to allow it. So I'll just park that thought there. And obviously I'm very happy to help with making data and stuff if it comes to that.
So one last thing then, and I will really have to go. So I'll try to share my screen again. I think you can see it actually. Please let me know if you do.
Yep.
Thank you. So the other thing that is also very much hidden is I made a new data structure called files with metadata. And in it, you have the files there, including the converted one. and you have like things like the creation date, modification date, MIME type, this kind of things. And what would be echoing this kind of workflow you mentioned, Mark, is we can imagine here having a sortable, or so here, or if we see the time of modification, they could be sorted by this, but we can expand or extend those metadata. And with the affordance matching in, namely if there is like a sortable true or timeline sortable true or timeline sortable, and then the index on which it is or the metadata field on which you sort, and then you get the timeline out of it, then we would have this kind of things. So I think it's relatively clean this way. I think it would make sense to do it this way.
That sounds lovely, and I mean, and there are all other, simple exercises we can do. Is sort the dogs differently from the cats, or put the locations differently to the people. But a big part of that is actually the sort of dog feeding and making the data so we can play with it. But anyway, I just thought I'd sort of put that into play for things as we go along. Fred,
I gotta run. Sorry, everyone.
bye.
Bye, Fabian.
I wanted to show you guys something else, something that Fabian cannot see. Is he still here? No, I'm just kidding.
Yes. Well.
Yes. Right. What is this? That's some background nonsense. Right. Okay, you can see my screen, right?
Yep.
Okay, so this is about AI. I've added a little thing. Rob, let's pretend you're my teacher and you've told me I have to write a paper. Give me the title of the paper, please, or the topic.
Cuneiform transformations in the Neo-Babylonian period.
Cuneiform transformations, would be nice if we could spell it. In the which period? Neo-Babylonian.
Neo-Babylonian.
Right, so I've added this prompt, made a bit of a feature of it, which is generate outline. I'm not asking it to write it for me, which would be a different kind of AI. I've asked it to do two things, the outline, and then to tell me a few pertinent things I may want to research for this paper. So, title, From Clay Tablets to Digital Text, Cuneiform Transformations and Their Modern Parallels. This is also, Rob, because author knows who I am. That's part of the prompt. I'm an academic with a PhD, blah, blah, blah. I'm interested in hypertext and stuff. So it's twisted it a little bit to fit that. So it goes through the Neo-Babylonian period, listing when it is. I should write the role of administration, changes, cuneiform as a hypertextual system, analyze cuneiform as an early form of hypertextual system with links between tablets and archives. Okay, that's a bit crazy and interesting. And then at the bottom here, key people, technologies, and concepts. Right, that's kind of cool, right?
Yeah, that's not bad.
So it's just, I'm just experimenting with how this can help us think rather than dumb us down. So I just wanted to share that. I thought it was kind of fun.
It's interesting. I assume that the large number of references to the things like hypertext presumably came back from because of your effectively the author profile that you put in the background, which you showed us.
Yeah. Yeah, let's change that actually.
What if you didn't put the background, your background?
Okay, I'm going to delete my background.
The question I was thinking about was what are the transformations in the actual signs, cuneiform signs that occurred during the Neo-Babylonian period and why?
So I've now removed all the stuff about me specifically. So now I ask it to generate an outline without knowing who I am. I cannot make the texts larger, so I'm glad you're on relatively good displays, guys. Could be faster, couldn't it?
Could be.
Have you tried the new Chinese one?
That's what I was going to ask.
I will definitely try it as a look. Okay, so here we have no references to hypertext.
Right.
Key people, no longer any hypertext people. So
I think this is interesting because it shows two useful things. I think the outline production is really, really interesting. It shows the challenge of implicit meaning in the title. So in other words, the transformations. So that Rob was actually thinking about transformations in the way characters were used, glyphs. But that wasn't explicitly stated in the title. So that's interesting. No, that doesn't mean that if you're doing this for an exercise, if you understood that was what was needed, you go back and you change the prompt. So that's not problematic. But it's interesting to see that laid bare quite nicely. That the thing that was actually at the center of the questioner's mind actually doesn't come through. But that's not a canard against technology.
No. That's basic understanding of and misunderstanding. Look at this. I said I'm a 7-year-old who loves animals and music. Very different kind of outline. Yeah, it's just kind of fascinating trying to make these things actually useful. Right. So thank you guys for today. We're getting somewhere. And of course, this conversation will be transcribed and AI'd.
Oh, a quick one before folk go. So I dropped a note into the Slack about this idea that the sort of different ways in which we perceive the XR space, and they're essentially expressed in a number of axes as to how literal things are or how figurative. Whether you're doing exploration, but effectively whether you're doing something very plastic exploring, or whether you're actually trying to draw hard edge diagrams. If anyone has any thoughts on that, let me know. The aim is that they will turn up to some short articles on the blog so that people can comment more widely. Is the list complete? No. Is it in any order? No. And it's not, the idea is not to tie it to sort of individuals, but to use it as a way to mediate how often when we're discussing things, we inadvertently actually are not discussing the same thing.
Yeah, and this is another area where over the years, Mark, we agree so much, because the key thing with digital is interactivity, and XR even more. So to be able to keep changing. I remember when I did my master's in HCI, my teacher, one of the few who kind of understood me, said that my work was not about organizing information, it was about organizing myself in the information. I thought that was a clever thing to say and nice to hear. So yeah, we need to look at ways to do both and more. That's good. All right, guys, see you on Monday. Monday will be quite ordinary, which we haven't had in a while, so it'd be good. So if you can be there, great. If not, fully understood, and we'll keep going. And now I'm going to test the upload of this recording. That's going to be very exciting. All right, have a good weekend. Bye.
Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.